Hey guys, this is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with another section of our Benny's Bats for today, Tuesday, August 18th. The idea of the Benny's Bats section is we try to look at every pitcher that's on the mound, figure out what their weaknesses are, and then figure out which bats on the other team profile to do the best against them. We got a full 15-game slate tonight for MLB, so let's get into it. First guy we're going to talk about is Adam Connelly from Miami. He's a left-handed pitcher. Right-handed bats have a higher average against him in his limited innings in the major league and also in his minor league innings this year. Two guys in that Milwaukee team that profile to do well against him. Ryan Braun is probably the best option. 393 WOBA, 238 ISO number. He's been hitting left-handed pitching really well so far this year. Probably the top option. He is a little bit pricey on every site that you're playing on. You're going to have to pay up for him, but he looks like he's in a good spot and could be worth it today. Next guy we're going to talk about is Chris Davis. Chris Davis has averaged 11.3 fantasy points over his last 10 games on DraftKings. So he's definitely another guy that you have to look at and put in play. He's been hitting a lot of home runs lately, batting in the 2-hole for that Milwaukee team, and he definitely has some upside here in a lefty-righty matchup. On the other side of that game, we got Tyler Cravey for Milwaukee. He's given up about a 295 batting average to both sides of the plate this year. Left-handed bats have already hit 3 home runs against him in only 10 innings. He's only pitched a few innings so far in the majors, but he has given it up to left-handers. The one guy who really stands out on that Miami team for me is Derek Dietrich. Dietrich homered again last night, has a 378 WOBA, 248 ISO number, so he has some power. He's been able to get a couple home runs, and he's been hitting right-handed pitching really, really well. If you wanted to go a little bit deeper, you can look at some of the guys like D. Gordon, Ichiro, Justin Bohr. They might all be in play today, left-handed bats on top of that Marlins order, going up against Tyler Cravey. Next guy we can talk about, Felix Doubront, left-handed pitcher for Oakland. Right-handed bats don't have a huge batting average against them, but they have hit a decent amount of home runs against them over the last couple of years. On that Dodgers team, you got a couple guys that they platoon in there against the left-handers. So you got to look at a guy like Enrique Kiki Hernandez, 524 WOBA, 379 ISO number. So he has been killing left-handed pitching so far this year. Yasiel Puig has a 388 WOBA, 264 ISO. He's been hitting well against lefties. They put him in the middle of the order when they face a left-handed pitcher, so he's another guy that we can consider. And the last guy, I don't know if he's going to be playing today. I think he's listed as day-to-day because he did get injured the other day, and that's Scott Van Slyke. If he's in there, he's got a 375 WOBA, was great against left-handed pitching last year. So just check the game logs, check the lineups before they come out. Like I said, he's listed as day-to-day. I don't know if he's going to be in the lineup, but if he is in the lineup, he does have good numbers against left-handed pitching. Excuse me. Next guy we could talk about is David Hale from Colorado. He's a right-handed pitcher. Left-handed bats are hitting 296 against him with 7 home runs and 24 innings worth of work. They are playing at Coors Field today. He's going up against the Washington Nationals. So Bryce Harper is the one guy who just bounces off the page at you. Harper has a 476 WOBA with a 344 ISO against right-handed pitching. Basically, in Coors Field, I think you can look at a lot of these Nationals bats. I think they're going to be very popular tonight, but as we know, Coors Field yields a lot of hits. That turns into a lot of runs. So I think that there's a little bit of merit to using anybody on this team today. I don't love the matchup for him. There's not a lot of guys that bounce off the page other than Bryce Harper. But again, it is Coors Field, and we have seen everybody, even an offense like San Diego who had been struggling, put up a decent amount of runs there. So anybody in Coors Field is always in play. It makes it very tough tonight because basically instead of looking for the best matchups, you always got to take that Coors Field game into account. There's going to be a pretty good premium on a lot of these guys. Most of the sites have been jacking up the players that have been playing in Coors. So you're going to have to pay up for these guys. But again, there's a reason why we always say it. Coors Field yields the most runs, yields the most hits. Definitely not something that you could ignore. Next guy to talk about, Chichi Rodriguez, right-handed pitcher. Left-handed bats have hit 258 against him so far this year. Going up against that Seattle team. So you got to look at a guy like Nelson Cruz, 404 WOBA, 272 ISO. He has power. He's been getting hits. He's been absolutely on fire lately. He's been smashing home runs. He's been getting RBIs. He's been getting on base. So Nelson Cruz is definitely somebody you have to consider. And the other guy I think I want to look at in this game, the left-handed bat, Robinson Cano has averaged 10 fantasy points on DraftKings over his last 10 games. Ever since they brought in a new hitting coach, Edgar Martinez, he's been smashing the ball all over the place. He's starting to get his groove back. And remember, I mean, there was a reason why this guy was the most expensive second baseman basically all season last year. There's a reason why he got a $240 million contract. He's one of the best pure hitters, especially at the second base position in all of baseball. So when he's on, he's definitely somebody you got to look at. Next guy we're going to talk about, Mike Pelfrey. Left-handed bats hitting 286 against Pelf with a 1.69 whip. So they've all been getting on base. Teixeira got hurt yesterday. I don't know if he's going to be playing today, but I think if he is out, you're going to see a guy like Beltran, who's been absolutely on fire, moved up in that order. Beltran's got a 356 WOBA, 217 ISO, and those numbers have come up a lot because he was cold earlier in the year. He has 3 homers in his last 4 games, hit the tying home run yesterday, so he's another guy that I think you got to consider. Besides him, you can look at a guy like Brett Gardner. Gardner's been a little bit on the cold side lately. He's down to a 355 WOBA with a 158 ISO. Haven't seen the power that he flashed earlier in the year, and he hasn't been getting hits as often. But again, he's a guy that has big upside. He can steal a base. He can go, home from second on a single. He can go first to third. So he's somebody that you definitely have to consider. You can look at guys like Brian McCann and Jacoby Ellsbury. They're both good hitters. They both like hitting against right-handed pitching, both left-handed batters. Neither one of them has great numbers so far this year, but they are both professional hitters, very good players. So they could be other guys that you might want to roll out if you decide you want to pick on Pelfrey today. Let's see. We got Kevin Gausman. Right-handed bats over the last 3 years have been the way to get him. A little bit of a reverse splits going on. This year, he's given up a 255 average with 5 homers and 28 innings pitched. So there's a couple guys you can look at on that Mets team. Curtis Granderson from the left side in the lefty-righty split. He's hit 381 WOBA with 228 ISO against right-handed pitching. So he's somebody that you got to consider on top of that order. The guy who I think is sneaky, who I like, though, is Travis d'Arnaud. 353 WOBA, 229 ISO in righty-on-righty matchups. He's shown a little bit of power as well, so I think he could be a good, cheap option for you at the catcher position. He's pretty cheap over on Fantasy Feud. He's pretty cheap over on DraftKings as well. So over on those 2 sites, I have put him in my rosters early today. And remember, tonight they're having another qualifier over on Fantasy Feud to get you into their big $500,000 championship event at the end of the year. I think they're down to about 10 or 11 seats left in that, so you still have a few more opportunities to try to get your way in. And with all the other qualifiers already filled up, it's pretty much the last chance that you have to get a big score out of MLB this season. So if you have a chance, get over to Feud. If you use the promo code CURVE when you sign up, you'll get a 100% deposit bonus and a $25 cash bonus on top of that from the Roto Curve community so that you can test out the site and see how it goes. If you like it, if you don't like it, make sure you get over to the forums and, leave some information. The guys from Fantasy Feud are over in the forums. They'll check it out. So either somebody from Roto Curve or somebody from Feud will get back to you if you have any questions or comments. And like I said, they want to know. They want the feedback. They want to know what we think of their product. So give it a try. Sign up through the, the link. Use the promo code CURVE. Try it out and let us know what you think about it. Because, anything we can tell them, they've been very open to, taking suggestions and making some adjustments to offer a better product out there. So we really like the fact that, the guys from Feud are willing to work with us. And, we want to make sure that we get them as much feedback as we can. Next guy that we're going to talk about, Matt Whistler. Whistler's allowed left-handed bats to hit 349 against him with 6 homers already in 25 innings. There's really no left-handed bats in that San Diego team that I'm afraid of. You can look at guys like Solarte or maybe a Will Venable. But again, nothing that's really jumping out of the page to me. The one guy who's good in righty-on-righty matchups on that San Diego team is Justin Upton. 364 WOBA, 219 ISO number. But again, this is not a great hitter's park. It's not a place where I really want to go out there and target him. But, if you're going to look at anybody, those are the guys that stand out on the numbers. Let's see. We got Ryan Vogelsong pitching today. Left-handed bats hitting 266 against him. He has an ERA against left-handed bats this year of 7.09, which is huge. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's given up 13 home runs to left-handed bats in 47 innings already. The only guy, this game is at St. Louis, so the only guy on St. Louis that I really want to use today is Matt Carpenter. 382 WOBA, 219 ISO number. He has 3 home runs in his last 8 games. He's been averaging 10.2 fantasy points on DraftKings in his last 10 games. So, I mean, he's back. He's basically back to that mid-season, early season form where he was absolutely on fire and a guy who I told you was a staple in my cash games day after day. He's still a staple in my cash games now, but if he's going to keep hitting with power like he has been at the moment, I think he's also a guy that you got to be able to put into consideration for your GPP lineups. Against a guy like Vogelsong, who gives up a lot of home runs to left-handed bats, basically about 1 every 3.5 innings at this point. I also think you can look at a guy like Carpenter for your tournament rosters. I think he's got that much upside today. Next guy we'll talk about, Chase Anderson. 275-ish batting average to both sides of the plate. Right-handed bats have a slightly higher home run rate against them than left-handed bats do, but you can basically use guys from either side. On that Pittsburgh team, the only 2 guys that really – well, actually 3 guys that really stand out today. Andrew McCutchen, 389 WOBA, 229 ISO number. He's somebody that's in play. You can look at Young Ho Kang, 356 WOBA, 148 ISO number. So he's an okay option at shortstop. And Gregory Polanco is the guy who's been on fire lately. He's averaged over 10 DraftKings points, or he scored over 10 DraftKings points in 8 of his last 10 games. I think he's averaging closer to 12 DraftKings points over the course of those games. So he's somebody that's been giving you some great returns at a pretty decent price on most sites. He's definitely not priced up as one of the most expensive options. He's pretty much a mid-tier kind of guy, but the production that he's giving you is much better than a mid-tier production. Next guy we can talk about, you got Scott Feldman for Houston going up against Tampa Bay. Right-handed bats have actually been doing a little bit better against Feldman, hitting 285 with 7 home runs and 47 innings pitched. The only guy I like to use against right-handers on that Tampa Bay team is John Jaso on top of that lineup. Jaso's got a 396 WOBA with a 167 ISO score. So he's probably the best option that you want to look for, even though it's not a righty-righty matchup, which is really where Feldman's been struggling. CC Sabathia, we talked about him yesterday, and then he wound up not getting the start. But today he is going to be getting the start as far as we know, even after all that stuff that happened up in the Toronto nightclub. I don't know if you guys had saw that, but, he basically was getting heckled. Almost got into a fight outside. There was a little bit of a scuffle in the street with, a couple of his boys, a couple of the guys in the Yankees, and, a couple hecklers from some bar up in Toronto. CC has been getting knocked around at home. He's given up an ERA at 6 at home, and he's been getting knocked around by right-handed bats who are hitting 329 against them with 21 home runs and 98 innings pitched. The 2 guys that we talked about yesterday are the same 2 guys we're going to talk about today. You got Aaron Hicks with a 436 WOBA, 235 ISO number. Hit another home run yesterday. I mean, this guy has been a great find for the Twins. He's been absolutely on fire lately, hitting on top of the order. He's been hitting home runs. He's been getting on base. He's been driving in runs. I mean, you really can't argue with the production you're getting out of a guy like Hicks. The next guy we can talk about is Brian Dozier. 367 WOBA for him, 244 ISO number. So obviously at a second base position, that's a little bit thin. He's one of the best options you can get. 244 WOBA from a second baseman is really high number. And again, with the way that CC's been giving up home runs and been pitching at home, I think it makes some sense to target some of these right-handed bats from the Twins against them. Next guy we can talk about, Eduardo Rodriguez from Boston. He's been really good so far this year. There's really no Cleveland bats I want to target. Jason Kipnis might be coming back today. Brantley came back the other day. But again, I mean, I'm not trying to go after any of these guys all that heavy. I think Eduardo Rodriguez is a pretty good pitcher. I expect him to have a pretty good game today. And there's not a lot of guys from the right side that I want to target against him on that Indians team. So I'm pretty much staying away from most of the Cleveland bats today. Let's see. We got John Danks going up, affectionately named Cy Danks lately because he's been really, really good for a guy who has numbers as bad as his numbers are. Actually, I shouldn't even say that. Left-handed batters are basically, not doing a thing against Danks this year. He's only allowed a 190 batting average to left-handed batters. Right-handed batters, on the other hand, are hitting 307 against them with 12 home runs and 94 innings. He has a 1.61 whip to right-handed batters. So right-handed batters is really the way you want to go after him. On that Angels team, the only guy who really makes a lot of sense is Mike Trout. 417 WOBA, 297 ISO. But even Trout is 0 for 6 with 4 strikeouts against Danks so far in his lifetime. So, I mean, like I said, he's the guy who stands out. You would think that Trout would kill a guy like Danks. But again, for some reason, Danks has been pretty good lately. He's been near unhittable. So I don't know if I really want to target too many of these Los Angeles bats. Again, like I said, Trout's the only guy who stands out on the numbers. Pujols hit a home run yesterday, so maybe he's about to start heating up again. But other than that, I really don't see much that I really want to go after. Let's see. We got Raciel Iglesias pitching for Cincinnati. Left-handed bats are hitting 327 against him with a whip of 1.75. He's going up against Kansas City. Eric Hosmer is absolutely on fire right now. He's got a 404 WOBA. He's got a 212 ISO number. Let's see. He's got 10 straight games with an RBI. He's got 9+ points in 8 straight games over on DraftKings. So I definitely think he's a good first base option you can put into play. And for some reason, he's one of those guys that always goes under-owned. He's, never one of those guys who has high ownership. But again, especially lately, he's been on fire. He's been producing. He's been putting up numbers. So there's no reason not to use him, especially where he's a little bit cheap. You're going to have a guy like Goldie today who's going to be obnoxiously expensive in a tough matchup with a decent left-hander. Even though he loves hitting left-handed pitching, you can get a guy like Hosmer for a lot cheaper, and his matchup is just as good, and he's probably been even hotter. He's one of the hottest hitters in the league right now, so Eric Hosmer is definitely somebody I think is in play. You can also look at a guy like Ben Zobrist. Zobrist has a 392 WOBA with a 194 ISO since coming over to that Royals team. He's been really, really good. He's been solid all year. He does hit right-handed pitching pretty well from the left side. So I think Zobrist and Hosmer are the two guys I'm really going to look at. I would have liked to use Alex Gordon as well, but I'm pretty sure he's still on the DL. If he is in there, go ahead and fire him up as well. But if he's still on the DL, obviously keep him out of your lineups. Let's see. We got Aaron Nola for Philly. Left-handed bats are hitting 304 against him. Right-handed bats are only hitting 232 against him. So it's going to be tough with this Toronto team because they are pretty right-handed dominant. But again, this is one of the best offenses in the league. They're playing in Philly, which is a pretty good hitter's park. So, I mean, I think you can look at all those guys. Joey Batista, Donaldson, Tulo, even Colabello, if Encarnacion is healthy and in there, Edwin Encarnacion. From the left side, the two guys that they kind of have, actually the one guy that they kind of have from the left side right now is Justin Smoke. So if you're looking for a cheap option, I know on Feud he had been min-price $3,500. He's been hitting a couple home runs lately. So putting him in your lineup at $3,500 lets you get in basically any of the big bats that you want. Anybody that you want to target, you can basically fit in if you can get a good guy in there that has some upside at min-price $35,000. Let's see. R.A. Dickey is on the other side of that game. When you go with R.A. Dickey, I kind of throw the numbers out. The thing I do with R.A. Dickey is I look at BVP. Because there are only so many guys in the league that throw a knuckleball. I think it's him, and then there's another guy on the Red Sox who's been throwing a knuckleball too. So they're about the only two guys that you can look at for comparables. So a couple guys that just stood out while I was looking at the numbers for Philly. Jeff Francoeur is 2 for 6 against R.A. Dickey, so he could be in play. Chase Utley is 4 for 13 lifetime, dating back to Dickey's time with the Mets, so he could be in play. And Freddie Galvis, another one, 3 for 10 against Dickey so far. So those would be 3 guys that I would look at. Again, you guys know how much I love Cesar Hernandez. He might be another guy who's in play. If he's on top of the order, all he has to do is get on base, steal a base, score a run, pays off his price for you on DraftKings. DraftKings is the one site I really like using them because they give you the biggest reward for a stolen base. They give you the most points for it, relative to the other stats. Let's see. Jordan Zimmermann, left-handed bats are hitting 284 against him. 7 home runs and 73 innings pitched. He was lights out in his last start against the LA Dodgers. So he is pitching better, but today he goes into Coors Field, pitches against a team that does hit right-handed pitching pretty well. You got Carlos Gonzalez, 412 WOBA, 320 ISO. Again, this guy had a rough start to the season, and he's been so hot that he's basically rocketed his numbers up to elite status in the course of about a month. Charlie Blackmon's actually cooled off a little bit. He's gone in the other direction. He's got a 373 WOBA with a 188 ISO, though. So he's another guy that you can look at here. And also cheap first base outfield option, Ben Paulson. 378 WOBA, 211 ISO number. Hits really well at home, really likes hitting in Coors Field. Not that anybody doesn't like hitting in Coors Field, but he seems to get an extra boost out of it when they do play at home. So Paulson is another guy I think you can look at. Anibal Sanchez, right-handed bats hitting 292 against him, 17 home runs and 70 innings pitched. To me, that means that a guy like Chris Bryant is probably my favorite option for the Cubs to go up against him. Bryant's got a 358 WOBA, 192 ISO, and righty-on-righty matchups. And left-handed bats are only hitting 214 against Sanchez. So everybody's going to be looking at guys like Rizzo and Schwarber today, and they do hit right-handed pitching very well. Both of them, they have insanely high WOBAs. Schwarber's ISO number is pretty ridiculous, especially for a catcher. Rizzo is more of an average hitter against right-handed pitching. But again, Sanchez has been really tough on these lefties. Righty on righty is the way to go after him. So I think if I'm using anybody on the Cubs here today, I'm probably going to be looking more at Chris Bryant. He profiles much better against Sanchez than any of those left-handed bats do. Let's see. We got Trevor Bauer, 235 batting average allowed, 23 total home runs this year, 235 batting average allowed basically to either side of the plate. The home run total is pretty high. He basically is a guy who either strikes people out or gives up a home run. So what you want to look at is guys who have a high home run rate, a high ISO score, pretty high WOBA, and a low strikeout rate. So the one guy who stands out on that Boston team for me, David Ortiz, he has a 396 WOBA, so that's pretty high. 279 ISO number, so that's very high. So you know that this guy has power. If he connects, he can take somebody yard. And his strikeout rate is pretty low. He has under a 12% strikeout rate, which I know sounds pretty high, but it's really not. There's not too many guys you're going to find that are in single digits. So I think Ortiz, especially for power hitters, I think Ortiz is probably the one guy that I would like to target against Bauer if I'm going to use anybody in this game today. I also, Boston, most people don't realize this, but Fenway Park yields a pretty good amount of hits and runs as well. So I think Fenway is also a park that you can start targeting batters in. If you haven't been. I know it kind of has a little bit of a reputation as being a pitcher's park, and I don't know where that comes from. If you look at the numbers, Fenway is definitely not a bad park, to take a bunch of hitters in. Let's see. We got Jake Odorizzi for Tampa Bay. Right-handed bats are actually doing better against him this year. They have a 232 average with 9 homers and 50 innings, but he's been pretty good too. It's not like I want to target a whole bunch of bats against him here. The two guys who stand out against righties on that Houston team, you got Carlos Correa in the 3-hole. He's got a 373 WOBA, 233 ISO number. Pretty much the only shortstop who hits in the 3-hole. The 3-hole has been shown to be the position in the batting order that produces the most fantasy points. So I think Correa is definitely a guy that's in play in a good righty on righty splits matchup against Odorizzi. The other guy would be Preston Tucker. Tucker is a lefty, so he has the lefty-righty splits going on, but he has a 370 WOBA and a 262 ISO number against right-handed pitching. So if I'm using anybody on this Houston team, those are the two guys that I might roll out. But again, I'm not really trying to target heavy against Odorizzi. He's actually a pitcher that I kind of like. Let's see, James Shields. Shields has been giving it up to left-handed bats. 284 WOBA, 17 home runs, and 70 innings pitched. But if you look at that Atlanta team, there really aren't a lot of left-handed bats you want to go after him with. You got guys like A.J. Pierzynski and Jace Peterson who might be in play, but they don't have huge upside, and they're not really guys that I'm looking forward to, having a lot of exposure to in my lineups. We got Hishashi Iwakuma, left-handed bats hitting 240 against him with 6 home runs and 36 innings. I guess on that Texas team, that means you can look at a guy like Prince Fielder, 404 WOBA, 153 ISO. Again, he hasn't had the huge power stroke that we expect out of him, but he has been getting some doubles. He has been getting some hits. He has been knocking in some runs. And, a 404 WOBA is pretty high, so that's something that you definitely have to respect. I feel like I like Fielder more for cash games than I do for tournament upside because he doesn't really have that home run upside that I look for at first base. But he can be a pretty good option here in a decent matchup. The other guy who I really like, though, and you can still find them cheap in spots, is Shin-Soo Choo. Choo has a 22-game streak where he's reached base. He's been getting much better. His numbers early in the year were putrid because he was basically ice cold. But since then, he's gotten a lot better. He's raised his numbers up. He now has a 377 WOBA and a 218 ISO number against right-handed pitching. So I think Choo is a guy who's back in play, especially at a discounted price. If you can get him for cheap, I think you take him, you put him in your lineup, and you roll with him. Let's see. We got Lance Lynn going up. Lance Lynn is going up at home at St. Louis against San Francisco. That San Francisco team has some pretty nice bats on it, but Lynn has really struggled most with left-handed batters this year. 257 average, 8 home runs, and 56 innings pitched. The only left-handed bat on that Giants team that I would look to target is Brandon Belt. 373 WOBA, 221 for him. Does have some power, although St. Louis is not an easy place to hit a home run. But hitting in that 5-hole, he should have a chance to drive in some runs today, and I think he's a pretty decent option. That pretty much sums it up for all the bats that I want to be targeting. Some of the guys who I'm not looking to go after, you got Edison Volquez against the Reds. Jason Hamill giving up a 220 batting average to both sides of the plate against Detroit. You got Garrett Richards going up against the Chicago White Sox. Francisco Liriano against that Arizona team. Goldie does hit very well against left-handed pitching, but Liriano's been very, very good this year. So I don't know how many bats I really want to target on that Arizona team. I mean, you look at guys like Pollock and Goldie against left-handers, and you think maybe they're in play. But, Liriano's not your average left-hander. He's probably one of the better ones in the league. DeGrom is going up against Baltimore. I really like Jacob DeGrom. He's been really good this year. Baltimore does have a high strikeout rate, so I think DeGrom's going to be a guy in play. But again, that Baltimore team just smashed like 30 runs in their weekend series. So, they've been putting up some points on the board. They've been getting a lot of hits. They've been hitting some homers. I don't think this is going to be an easy matchup for DeGrom, but I think he's still probably a pretty good bet here. And the last guy is Clayton Kershaw going up against Oakland. I mean, I could give you all the stats, but it's Clayton Kershaw, and he's going up against an Oakland team that's struggling. So, yeah, he's going to be a guy that's in play and definitely not somebody I'm looking to take any bats against. So I know it was a little bit long today, but we had a lot to talk about. That sums it up for our Benny's Bat section here at RotoCurve. Thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you get over to the RotoCurve site at rotocurve.com and sign up for an account if you haven't already. Start posting in the forum. Start earning your curve points. You can trade them in for merchandise, tickets to baseball games, money for you to play on the sites. We also have some great bonuses going on right now. A lot of the sites are working with us for the football season. They want us to bring in some new people, some new blood for them. So we made them give us some of the better offers, that we have in the league. So if you guys are looking to join a new site, if you're looking to sign up for a site, get over to the RotoCurve community in the forum. You'll see a lot of the promo codes that we have there. 100% deposit bonuses. You get an extra $20 or $30 to spend. There's a lot of good stuff over there. So again, my name is Benny Ricciardi. You can follow me on Twitter at BennyR11. You could also follow RotoCurve on Twitter at RotoCurve. And as always, stay classy, DFS.